Hi, Richard.
Good
Thank you.
evening.
Good evening. I thank you for joining me. And it was such a, and I'm really honest here. It was really wonderful to meet you a few weeks ago
Well, it was a
in the
nice
Czech Republic.
weekend, wasn't it? I really enjoyed myself. I hope you did too.
I did too, and it was wonderful. Like that first evening before before the first day when we met in that little restaurant there, and you sat across from me with your beautiful sideburns. I was very impressed.
This was a request from my wife. She said, why doesn't anybody have sideburns anymore? Sorry. It seems to be helpful when you're wearing a mask. Okay.
No, I thought you had a really good look, and it was very very nice. I mean, this is kind of, I guess it's obvious that people who are good with words, who are writers, also have a good voice. But I was very impressed by your voice and by your, I don't know what the right word is, dialect. Is that the right word in English to use for the kind of English you speak?
It's not, well, I hope it's a lack of dialect. This is an interesting subject because when I was at school and afterwards, any kind of regional dialect was regarded as not conducive to getting on in life. You were required to learn neutral English. It's called received pronunciation, and so we all did that. But nowadays it's completely different. When you talk to people in sort of official positions, they're usually proud to demonstrate where they come from, what part of the British Isles, by means of their dialect, their accent, right?
Yeah.
And this is something completely new to me. I remember a couple of years ago trying to get a new British passport online. And the guy I spoke to at the passport office had such a strong Belfast accent, Northern Irish accent, I couldn't actually understand him. And I kept asking him to speak. Wait.
Yes, please.
I kept asking him to speak more clearly, and he got quite offended and thought I was being discriminating, you know. And that wouldn't have happened when I was a young lad. That everybody tried to speak a sort of neutral English, which is silly, really, because if you come from Scotland or Ireland or the south of England like me, and you talk with like Robert Fripp does, actually, with a sort of little bit of a homely down south accent, and it's nice, you know. It's why try and hide it? Why should everybody speak the same? But I've just got it in my head now. I can't change it now. I sort of try to speak without any kind of regional accent.
It's funny that you say and describe it that way, because it sounds a little bit like the idea of Hochdeutsch.
Yeah.
And I think there's quite a bit of similarity in the kind of like how the voice is being used in in your kind of English and my kind of German, and also your kind of German.
Yes, well, as I already said to you, I never learned Bavarian. You know, even after 40 years, I still can't get it right. If I spent some time in Berlin and Hamburg over the years, then I start talking German like those folks do up there. Anyway, it was a requirement I could call it a career requirement to speak neutral English. It's expected of you then, and that's what was it was sort of forced upon us at school. But I don't think it's any particular advantage, really. You should be able to express your identity. It's where you come from is part of who you are. I don't see why you should deny
that. I agree. I agree. Even though I think there's an advantage, at least like with Hochdeutsch, where it's just something where you're basically meeting somebody, with less prejudice, maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a big question. It depends on the situation. I certainly have to say that it's extremely difficult to write lyrics in high German. Correct German, grammatically correct German. It's a real barrier to expressing yourself literally, simply because the language is so precise.
Yeah.
And so that all the either if you sing in Kölsch or Austrian or Bavarian or Platt or the songs seem to work better, because you can find ways around. Oh yeah, you can find ways around this grammatical precision. That's I mean, some people do it. I think is this right that for example. There are some very few, presumably well-educated pop singers who can write pop songs in German, and they sound convincing. Like what's his name? Oh shit! The use of correct German in a song is it means that you really have to know your stuff. I think I get this impression. I've tried it and I can't do it. I can't write lyrics in German.
Yeah, I've never even thought about it. I think it's just it may just be true. But then when you're looking at like traditional songs, German songs, or classical like das Kunstlied, for example, like Schubert stuff.
Yeah.
It certainly works, but it sort of like has to go with the correct correct or the right kind of music, let's say. For pop music, yeah, for pop music there was a little bit of this revolution when you had in the early 90s, like Xavier Naidoo or something, people starting to sing in German, and it was basically just an update of Schlagermusik, right?
Good, yeah, right. I agree.
Yeah.
Mr. Grönemeyer, he can do it, but yes. I mean, he's a sort of quite a well-educated chap, and but it's not easy. And I know that, for example, sort of rock and blues music down here in Bavaria, there's quite a strong tradition now of Bavarian blues songs. They certainly don't work they certainly wouldn't work in high German. Yeah.
But like how many words, how many songs have you written in your life? Do you know the number?
Well, I've got, I don't know exactly how many, but I know I've got more than 400 copyrights registered with GEMA. These are lyrics, that published lyrics. And how many I've written, it must be about 4 times that, because so much stuff gets swept under the carpet or forgotten or thrown away or whatever. You just have to keep throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that some of it sticks. This is in fact the definition of being a professional lyricist. You just have to keep writing stuff in the hope that I mean nowadays I'm in the position now that I can try and make sure when I write for somebody that at least I've got the guarantee that it's going to appear, that it's going to come out, it's going to be released. But that wasn't always the case. I just had to do it. I just had to write. Somebody gave me a cassette tape and said, try something with this, and I tried something and hoped that it was going to happen. Otherwise, I don't see any other, unless you've got unless you're sort of Bernie Taupin working with Elton John. I don't see any other way of making a living as a lyricist. You just have to write everything that comes into your grasp, that falls into your lap. You have to try and write something. Yeah. And out of this avalanche of words, some of the stuff seems to tick. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of there may be some colleagues who also write lyrics for lots of different people who disagree with me on this, but that was the way I did it. Just particularly in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, I just wrote stuff for anybody who'd send me a tape. Well, almost. I mean, some stuff was obviously not viable. And since then, I've been able to say, well, I'm sorry, I honestly don't think I can do this. I don't find any way in to get into this music. So sorry, let somebody else try.
So it's more than 400 that were published. You say that seems a lot to me, but like even taking into account that it's been like 3 decades.
More than that, right? Getting on for 5 decades now.
Wow.
The thing is, there was a period when I was working on a sort of almost sort of production line basis for various productions in Munich for Areola and record company, for BMG, Areola, and for Ralph Siegel, and for and lots of independent things on the side. And it has been a long time. I mean, it's certainly not the case that the 400 or 450 or whatever it is. I honestly don't know how many that are registered with Gamer. I don't know how many of them actually pay the rent. That means it's probably, well, now you can Gamer offers you a breakdown of your songs, of your what you've produced, doesn't it? So I had a look at that a couple of times, and there are a couple of hundred things on there. Those are the songs that bring more than just a couple of cents, but probably there's not more than 24 songs that out of all this stuff that actually generates income,
And 24 is kind of like a lot, I would say, even, like it's I mean, you can count yourself lucky to have that many songs that still kind of like are being played, right?
I do count myself lucky, and the frustrating thing is that you think, and there are once you realize how this works with the with the exploitation of pop songs over the years, you realize just how lucky you are. And you also realize that with a little tiny little bit more luck, you could have become a millionaire. You know? If you've got let's say half a dozen classics in your portfolio, as it were,
Yeah.
you know, you're set up for an island in the Caribbean, or, and yeah, but I unfortunately I didn't quite make that. I just had to keep writing all these hundreds of songs, and I think it's probably about 24 that actually bring regular income.
Yeah.
And not always very much. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes the main the nicest thing that can happen is that the publisher, usually completely independent of the original authors, gets synchronization rights for TV advertising or whatever on the song, and that's like that's great because the money just comes out of thin air. There's one of my regulars is a song that is regularly used in France for a brand of condensed milk, which is it just keeps on going and going. They keep using this campaign over the years. And King Crimson had did I mention this when we were talking? King Crimson had the beginning of the song "Easy Money," even before the song, the part where the actually even before the rhythm starts, it's just the noises, atmospheric stuff. At the beginning of the song was used by Toyota for a series of 6 advertisements for a car called something or other. It didn't even appear in Europe. It was a car for the Japanese market. And they spent a fortune on these ads, which were made by an avant-garde Japanese video artist. It's all complete nonsense. It's the people, scantily clad ladies daubing themselves with paint, jumping up and down on this car. And there's this little bit of King Crimson running at the front. I mean, it's not a fortune, but they certainly spent a lot of money on these 20 seconds of easy money. And this was like, what, I don't know, 30 years after the recording, you know. That's really weird. That's about the nicest thing that can happen to you as a lyricist.
I mean, it's
but
wonderful.
It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, it's wonderful of these structures. If these structures are in place, so that something like that can happen, and you know, the you know, the originators get paid. You know,
absolutely.
I think that's, you know, that nowadays it's not. It's much harder, because you need a certain kind of, or you need to have had a certain kind of management so that all of these things are in place. And
this is very true. And I've never had any kind of management, something that I often regretted very much indeed. I wished that I often thought it would be so great, not just as a lyricist, but as a songwriter in general, or as a musician, have somebody, management, an agent who got me work, who fixed me up with stuff. I often thought that would be really great. Of course, now looking back, I'm glad I didn't, because he or she would have only been able to work on the basis of a considerable cut of what I was earning, which wasn't very much anyway. Yeah. But it would have made life easier, less stressful. So I imagine. But I never had anybody like this, so I don't know. I don't know. But nowadays you certainly need somebody. to take care of your product. I hate to use the word. To get it out of the people, you know, to organize all the necessary digital possibilities of digital exploitation. You need help with this.
Richard,
Do you have help? Do you have help?
No,
You've got
no.
You've got a company.
It's a never-ending nightmare. And
Really?
and yeah, I'm doing everything myself, and I'm currently in the process of reorganizing everything, and it's a challenge, really. It really is. But Richard, something different. I'm gonna ask you here to start the video again, because for some reason it stopped working again. So can you see this?
I've just clicked on it.
Yeah, it's just black. Ah, no, there you are.
Right.
Yeah, but it's lagging behind quite a bit, but it doesn't matter, because like the voice part of this is the most important. So
right.
let's
No,
not.
you've been lagging behind as well. So I don't know why this is. Is it a sort of insufficient connection?
Probably.
I think it should be running. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Let's not worry about that. Yeah. So Richard, I looked up your Wikipedia page, because that is kind of like an interesting source of information nowadays. And can you still hear me?
Yeah, fine. I'm still here, and so are you.
Okay. And it was interesting to see that you were kind of associated, or you were in the band Supertramp, like in the late 60s, for one album. And you know, like after we had met, I listened to that album, and I kind of liked it, I have to say. It was fascinating, because I only know the famous really famous Supertramp albums. And what kind of like is so fascinating about meeting you, Richard, is that there is like this really good big chunk of time that you've been doing stuff on this planet. And and it was it's just so great. You know, like obviously, like, because I have been a King Crimson fan for a long time, and have been associated with the band also. And I hate to say it, but you know, the fact to meet somebody who's written the words was maybe even like a stronger aha moment than meeting the people who've written the music. And I don't even know why that is, but there's something really very direct about language. And I would like to know, you know, with all your experience with words, what is sort of like, is there some sort of responsibility you have as a writer of words to, I don't know, to do whatever?
Responsibility.
Yeah.
I see this, first of all, I've certainly always felt a responsibility to whomever was singing the song. I thought that this is quite an invasive thing, is putting words into somebody else's mouth.
Yeah.
And I tried to remain sort of authentic to this person. That means I wanted always people to, whoever was singing the song, I wanted to be able to, I wanted this person to identify with what what was on the piece of paper in front of them. That's the responsibility, certainly. There's also the responsibility to the band, if it was a band, that they get stuff that's respectable and you know, isn't going to interfere or even mess up their image or whatever. Although I have been in the situation that people that I wrote for said to me, "We can't do this. We can't do this because it's not us." Okay, you know. But I tried to avoid that. I tried to give the right stuff to the right, make the right music in the right musical situation. And to explain this, I have to say that I always write on the basis of a melody. I don't supply a piece of paper with a lyric written on it and say, look, here you are, can you write something around this? I know lots of I know lots of songwriters like to work this way. They like to have to start with a lyric and then write a song around those words. But I don't like doing this. I've never done it, or maybe once or twice, but it's never been a good solution for me. I need the melody. Even following a written score sometimes, but at least a clearly defined recording of a melody line. I really need that.
Yeah.
To make it singable, because that's the craft involved is making sure that that it's singable. You know, otherwise, in other words, you have to sort of sometimes I had to throw away sort of fancy ideas because I couldn't find a way to make it singable. It wouldn't articulate, and I mean, this sounds very this all sounds very idealistic, but in fact, of course, quite often the situation was that I was working on the album would be a dance album, and it's recorded in a set time with a set budget, and I'm sitting there in the studio with a young gentleman or a young lady who's whose native language is not English, and is really sure about how to pronounce the stuff. And you just try and find solutions that work in the terms of that musical situation, or that vocal situation, or whatever. And of course, you get wrapped up in whether he or she can sing or not. And well, let's say that it's a big help if you set out to be a pop star, that you can actually have the talent to sing in tune, which strangely enough lots of people don't. Even lots of very successful people don't, as I discovered to my amusement. It's very hard work. And I mean, musicians are awful about this, about sort of making slimy comments about people who aren't really aware of what their actual talents are or aren't. I think we should all be very careful about this, because it's a sort of minefield. Because I don't know, I can think of lots of people that I've worked with that I wouldn't have given a chance to at all, and they became quite sort of, you know, they gave their audience a lot of pleasure, and I'm just being very sort of grumpy and a curmudgeon, standing in the way of that and saying, "Oh, you can't sing. Oh, come on, get off." And this is silly. You shouldn't do this. You should always try and you know, get the best out of the situation. Yeah. So what was the question again?
No, it's just from you know, like kind of like summarizing for myself what you just said, you're basically saying that even though you are a wordsmith, to use that word, you approach things from the musical side, from the melody, and the performance and the aspect of the singing is very important to you, and you've had lots of experience saying like kind of different kinds of people who've actually utilized your skills to write lyrics, and I guess because you know, since you've been in Germany since the mid 70s or something, right? Like you must have, and as you said, you've worked for companies in Germany, record companies. It's there. But let me just jump to some other place for a moment. Do you have like a favorite lyric and like a favorite song that you've been involved with?
I think, I mean, obviously, I think some songs work better than others.
Yeah.
But I couldn't necessarily say that it's because of my contribution. It just happens that it turned out that stuff turns out right because, I don't know, it's the song itself or the situation, you know, when it came out, the constellation of the act, and you know, I've done so many different things. It's very difficult to say. There's some. I think the most successful ones for me personally usually are the simplest, and the simplest lyrics are the ones that cause me the most problem. Getting there, it takes a long time to throw out all the stuff that you don't need. I'm thinking about this quote, this Miles Davis quote. Apparently, he said, "Think of a note and don't play it." Have you heard that?
Yeah.
I think it's probably it's probably not. It's probably a myth that he said that, but I like the idea very much, and it's the same thing with writing lyrics. If you start falling in love with your phrases, then you should sort of probably throw them out and start again. On the other hand, sometimes it just happens. The thing writes itself. That's the ideal situation, isn't it? You're so sort of happy about the whole setup, the singer and the way the thing's being produced, the song, and it's quite clear what has to happen. And as I say, I just hope then that the people who ask me to write the lyrics see it the same way, which also isn't always the case. And this is it's quite difficult, to tell you the truth. It's quite difficult for me to talk about writing lyrics because it's not really something that it just turned out that way that I could make a living from it. And I don't think there are very many people who can make a living from it. If you look at the gamer statistics, you look at the ordentliche Mitglieder, the full gamer members. What is it? It's about it's many thousand composers, right? 6,000 or 8,000 composers are full members of gamer. I think about, I don't know, a few hundred lyricists, not 1,000, I don't think, who are full gamer members. So it's not something that gets much publicity unless you are one of these very talented and very lucky people. I've already mentioned Bernie Taupin, and there are others who just write hit after hit after hit. They just communicate with people on a level which I find purely magical. It's a very special talent. And a lot of the time, my job has been more like, or often like an advertising copywriter. You have a target group. have a set vocabulary that you can use, particularly working in Germany or France or Italy. The producer often just won't accept words that he doesn't understand, and it's rather like working in an advertising agency. You have to make it. You have to put in sort of certain catchphrases that the producer imagines are going to be are going to sell the song. Nowadays, however, this is all, we're talking about the past here. I'm happy to say this doesn't really apply anymore, because nobody asks me to write a song for Billie Eilish or somebody who's at the top of the charts. So I can do what the hell I like, and that's great. That was like back at the beginning with Supertramp and King Crimson. I could do what the hell I liked as well. That was great.
So Richard, I will keep kind of like jumping around with my questions or my pointers here, because I think there are a few things we can and will maybe uncover about your art. And as you say, like I'm quite intrigued by what you're saying, that it's like somebody writing for a purpose, right? Like and for a very specific setting, where it's a commercial product. And it's really it's fascinating, because as you were saying, like your main concern has always been the music, the melody, and
that's right.
You started out as a musician, writing and playing, right?
Yeah,
and
I wanted to be a guitar hero, right? And during the course of the 70s, I slowly started realizing this wasn't going to happen. I kept telling myself, one day I'm really going to sit down and start learning all the scales and rehearse them every day, and get my right hand into heavy action, and because I'm left-handed. And that just didn't happen, and it just turned out that I could, you know, I was getting more and more people sending me stuff to write the words for. So I sort of accepted that after a while, and sort of pretended to be a guitarist, played in bar bands, and you know.
Do you remember what that like, I don't know what the right word here is, like avenue was, that people, like, why did people ask you to write for them? I know that in the case of John Wetton, you were friends, but how did that come about with other people?
That the fact that I'd written for King Crimson was a big help in Germany. Quite shortly after in the years after the 3 albums that I worked on, which were 72 to 74. And immediately after that, people started getting, even though people who actually didn't have really any particular interest in King Crimson, maybe it was just a stepping stone. It was just like it was just that it was a known band. So I started getting offers for all sorts of stuff that really was completely, pop songs and dance productions and so on. Not so much because directly that I'd worked for King Crimson, and also with Supertramp at the very beginning. That was sort of a bit under the radar, but because people had seen records with my name on it. That's it, basically.
Yeah, I was just gonna point that out, that and this is also something that doesn't really exist anymore these days, that you had credits, you had credits on the physical product, you had the physical piece that you would have to put on the record player. And that's why people were making that association with your name and the words and the power of the music and the power of the words. and that kind of like jump started your career as a lyricist. That's
Yeah,
great.
I think the I can't say that it sort of evolved. You know, yeah, the mechanics of it is that if you write something and you start getting, if you're going to get any money from it, it starts coming in 18 months afterwards anyway. You know, you don't get rich overnight. And so I didn't really treat it seriously at all. I thought my day job is writing bits of film music and playing in bar bands, as I say, and and it just so turned out that the sheer volume of stuff that I wrote started to bring in a little bit of money, but it's a because I'm slightly sidestepped the question about personal favorites,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because
Oh, your microphone is off, Richard. Can you? You have to. Yes,
unmute.
you're
Am I
back. You're
back
back.
again?
You're
I
back.
can
Yeah.
say unmute. Okay, unmute. That may have been judicious on the behalf of Zoom. I don't know. The situation is that I really don't want to. I really don't like trying. I don't like sort of directing what people think about the songs that I've written. I want people to accept the lyrics on their terms, not on mine. I can give you an example. A concrete example is this: is the song "The Night Watch" for King Crimson, which is a direct and literary, not literary, literal description of Rembrandt's work in 17th century Holland. It's just a sort of, well, it's lifted from my sixth form notes, really. When I wrote, when it first came out, I don't think anybody understood what the song was about. It was just because it was King Crimson. It was just accepted that this is a very obscure and difficult text with lots of strange references
Mm-hmm.
that nobody twigged. It's quite sort of direct. It's like a teacher standing in front of the class and saying, this was Rembrandt's situation, and these were the people he painted, and this was their relationship, and that's how life was back then. I mean, all in 20 lines or whatever it is. And but nobody understood that at the time. People wanted it to be something very obscure and difficult and spiritual. In the I remember in Melody Maker or New Musical Express, the one journalist picked up on the line "guitar lessons for the wife" and thought this was a direct statement from Fripp that he was. I don't think he was married at the time, but this is a statement he's telling his fans that he wants his wife to learn to play guitar. And I thought, okay, it was probably, I thought at that time, it's probably a mistake to do this. Now, 20 years later, 30 years later, the internet arrives and people are analyzing everything down to the last. And now everybody knows what it's about. This is really great. They understand the song now, but I don't want to dictate what they find in this lyric. If you can either way, if you find it mystical and interesting and completely impenetrable, that's fine. And if you see that it's just a sort of a report on Rembrandt, 17th century Holland, which is even you might even find that really banal. That's okay too. I don't want to change your the way these words are accepted. And I think that I know that I can give you another example of the problems with lyrics. We all know and love these big Toto hits. I'm thinking about Africa. And because I'm a lyricist, I always thought that the lyrics for Africa were absolutely brilliant. And I worked out a whole story behind these lyrics that just doesn't exist. I wanted there to be this to have an incredible depth and meaning. You know, God bless the rains down in Africa, and it doesn't. It's I'm not saying it's a hack job, but it's not. It's a row of interesting images and thoughts without any particular guiding leitmotif,
Yes.
without any main theme,
Yes.
actually. And this is where I get more enjoyment out of the song, thinking that it's something really sort of deep and complex, which in fact it isn't. So I don't like trying to tell people what they ought to like about my lyrics. I said the ones that I think work best, the very simple ones, just.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that as well. But you know, like this afternoon, I showed my daughter, my 2-year-old daughter, like the 26 most famous paintings,
Oh
and
yeah,
the Night Watch was part of that. Interestingly
yeah.
enough, and so just a few hours ago, I looked at it, and I've always really liked. I've only ever known your, I guess, think your King Crimson lyrics, and I think they're great. I just wanted to just put that out there. I think they, like, reading the lyrics, the song comes alive for me. So, you know, there's some kind of music or some sort of like song where the music makes the lyric, or reminds me of the lyric, but here the lyric is really very much tied into the texture of the song.
That's great, Marcus. That's really great. But in fact, I think you're talking more about John Wetton than about me. I think that his talent as a vocalist is the key to what you're saying.
Yeah, you may be right. So do you remember, or can you just tell us how your friendship with John led to you writing for King Crimson? Do you remember when did he actually approach you, or how did that come about?
I can't quite remember, but I think we used to see each other regularly in the early 70s, because I just moved to Munich, and he loved coming over to Munich for various reasons. He always got laid, and he liked getting drunk and all the rest of it. And he was enthusing about what he has often described as a sort of chance meeting with Robert, which sparked off this version of King Crimson, this incarnation of King Crimson. And they must have said, I don't know, they were probably shooting the breeze, as the Americans say. And John said, yeah, and I know a guy who writes lyrics for people, sort of thing. It's an old buddy. And incidentally, he comes from Bournemouth as well, and so on. Whatever. And John said, John was enthusing about the band, and they've been rehearsing together in London, and he was very enthusiastic about David. He was so thrilled to play with a violinist who could improvise, because that was quite unusual, particularly a classically trained violinist who could improvise. And we've been listening to the record of I would say, in retrospect, the overpowering influence at that time. We're talking about 71, 72, was Hot Rats, Frank Zappa, and the two great jazz rock violinists on that record, and John was so thrilled to be able to. We were so in love with this record and this sound and this and he was so pleased to be rehearsing with David, and he played me tapes of their rehearsals for hours and hours and hours. But we weren't talking about songs, or we weren't talking about lyrics. But he was enthusing about the new band. And then one day, I just got a cassette in the post in Germany with 2 or 3 songs on it, and with a sort of scribbled notes and try something. And there's a crescendo comes after this, or we'll probably make this shorter, or we'll probably make this longer, or whatever. And that was it. I just wrote off the top of my head what I thought was fitted the bits of melody. I needed the melody, you know. I always need the melody, and the bits of melody that I had were for Easy Money.
Saturdays and Exiles, or
Saturdays and Exiles, yeah, must have been,
yeah, real classics.
And Easy Book of Saturday. I thought that's a wonderfully melodic. I mean, I don't know how many people realized what the kind of melodic talent that was available in the band at that time. It wasn't just virtuosity. It was also an incredible sense of melody. Robert has it, and John had it, and David has it as well. And with Bill, that's exactly the right guy he can immerse himself musically in melodical stuff, or crazy stuff, chaotic stuff. So that was a pretty wonderful band, actually. It was an amazing combination, and so I was I was very thrilled to be able to do something that was part of that. But I was a little bit worried about whether the stuff I wrote was fitting or acceptable, and I was sort of expecting this to be discussed at great length and depth, and it never was. I think once I had a long conversation with Robert when they were on tour in Germany, and we started off talking about the lyrics, but in fact we didn't. It was supposed to be a discussion on the lyrics, but he started talking about what he calls the King Crimson epic ballad, and writing melodic songs, and the involving his bandmates in writing melodic songs. And it was all a lot more interesting than talking about the lyrics, actually. It was sort of fascinating stuff.
So you did see the band live in Germany for the first time?
Yeah. I don't know how many times, 4 or 5 times. I went on tour with them for a couple of days. It was like a courtesy visit, you know.
And Jamie was there as well, right?
I saw them in Munich with Jamie. That was an amazing show. But at that time, I must have written the first couple of songs. I don't think that I'm not sure if they'd recorded Lark's Tongues in Aspic or not. The first album that I worked on. I can't get this chronologically, but I saw them in Munich with Jamie. That was incredible. And afterwards, this was it must have been about a year afterwards, I went on tour, on the German tour with them for 2 or 3 or 4, 3 gigs, something like that. I remember in Mainz, in Augsburg, and in Pforzheim. And the gig in Pforzheim, which has now come out on one of the endless live regurgitations. I've got it up here. That was a humdinger. That was so intense. I mean, I mean, Pforzheim, you know, have you been to Pforzheim?
I have.
Okay. But that doesn't matter. The gig was so intense. It was incredible. They were completely knocked out afterwards as well. The band, they were flattened, finished.
Mm-hmm.
It was so. It was really, really dark and scary. It was great, and you get a little bit of it on the recording as well. It's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you know, I was just being a guest, and it was like a public relations sort of meet and greet thing, you know, and so that was. But I wasn't really so involved with the band. My connection was with John. He because he had to sing the stuff, and so that was my prime concern was with him, and the other three were not. I won't say they're disinterested, but they accepted that situation.
Yeah.
John and I worked the stuff out, and that was okay.
Yeah. So when we met a few weeks ago, and we played these like 2 shows, I was surprised, but I thought it was great that you were performing in the Court of the Crimson King, a version of In the Court of the Crimson King, singing Pete Sinfield's lyrics. And I find that kind of like really great, because like this band that has been around for 52 years, or I guess 52 years, yeah, which is a very long time. Like, and you have all these different chapters, and things are kind of like overlapping occasionally,
right.
and you singing that song, that was, for me, that was it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was a piece of fan on my for me as well. That was a sort of that's real sort of fan tribute stuff. I'm a King Crimson fan doing that, and that came about because Alain Simon, with his Excalibur project, wanted to do it. He wanted to do the song, and he said, "Well, you worked for King Crimson, you sing it." I said, "Well, what?" I can't even play the chords. And so I got into that for him, and I've done it a couple of times now, and got into the swing of it. And the thing is, I suggested it to David because I know that it's a great audience grabber. Everybody loves it, even non-King Crimson fans love it. It's real sort of it's real sort of you know, it's an oral oral spectacle, and I had great fun doing it with the Excalibur show, and that's there are always lots of singers, and they always do this amazing choir. It's really great fun, and when that record came out in '69, I just started. Supertramp was just getting together, as it was. We were getting to know each other, sort of thing, and we all said, well, as a sort of everybody should bring along 1 or 2 records that he finds really cool, so we can get to know each other a bit. And that was in fact what I think my contribution to this was the In the Court of the Crimson King was the record which had just come out, and I think a Jethro Tull album, and which sort of didn't raise too much response among my colleagues, but King Crimson certainly did, because nobody had ever heard anything like it, right? Can't imagine you honestly what the impact of this record. It was just extraordinary. And so it was even quite scary because it was so different. It came completely out of the blue. The whole package, the cover, the playing, this mixture of prototypical metal and sort of Gothic fantasy. This was all new. This was all new, and Pete Sinfield's sort of very flowery imagination. This was great stuff, and it was all new, and I loved it. So singing that song for me is a sort of you know, I'm really the King Crimson fan who gets dragged up on stage to do a number. You know. That was great. That's why I suggested it to David and said, but you'll have to lend me your band, please, because you can't do it alone on guitar. You know, or at least I haven't worked out a way to do it alone on guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a people enjoy the song, and I was always terribly in awe of Crimso's technical prowess, virtuosity. It was Robert in any case, but he's so much a law unto himself. But you did the guitar craft thing, right? You're an adept of this. How did it strike you? You know, the being confronted with this music and this approach to music.
It was you know, meeting the perfect person at the perfect time for me. I was 18 and I was not interested in any of the I don't know which word to use here, like, because Robert is quite a figure, quite a guru for a lot of people. For me, he wasn't. You know, I was too young to even have the concept, right? So for me, it was great because he was very generous in giving out information, and his teaching when it comes to the music and the instrument in particular was great. And I spent about 7 years kind of like close to those circles of people and, you know, working with them. And then there was one night in Alfeld in Germany, which is close to Hanover, and I decided I need to go. And it was a really clear feeling, like I need to go and I need to sort of like do my own thing and apply what I've learned. So that's how it went for me. And you know, just like what you were saying, I don't know, it's very different, but for me, music is always the motivator. Music itself is what makes me happy. So it's not performing the music, or it's not even creating the music, it's listening to the results of my work. And it was so that's why, like, the actual side of, like, as you were saying, like the virtuosity or whatever, it was never really that important to me in the sense of virtuosity that other people would understand as virtuosity. You know, for me, virtuosity is about playing that one note beautifully, is about, you know, like conveying that sense of magic with a certain combination of notes that sound beautiful, right? And that, so that's why, like, I think like Robert's teaching was very much kind of like geared towards a certain deeper understanding of the creative process somehow, and not so much about virtuosity at all for me, I have to say. And so yeah, that's sort of like what I have taken kind of like from that world. And I really say taken because it feels a little bit like that, like it was being offered to me and I was able to take it.
Well, that's all right. That's a good definition of learning the craft as a musician. I think, and your co-adepts or your colleagues in the other crafty guitarists, was there a very diverse cross section of personalities and backgrounds, or was it a were there certain um, sort of elements that brought these people together? Was it were they all different, and they just joined by the Roberts yeah, well, Roberts structure, in musical structure, that it's quite extraordinary, really, as far as I understood what went on. Were
To be
they very diverse?
well, to be quite honest, like I'm not in the position to actually even know how diverse they were. Maybe for me, they seemed diverse, or maybe samey. I don't know. Like, because I think people were coming together because of the say that the big sign that was being held up was the music. It was
Yeah.
not Robert Fripp, or it is just that people start, just like we were saying, that your name was on the album cover and people read it, and all the emotion that the music creates within them was then projected onto those names, onto those people. And that's a good thing, right? Like, because it gives you a future, it gives you a career. And I think that's sort of like the feeling I had, that there were quite a lot of people there that came for the love of that particular music. And that was a little bit different for me, like, because like I said, like I claim that I just simply love music, all sorts of music. Like I'm not judgmental when it comes to music at all. I'll just love it, and I enjoy I love the idea that somebody engages in the act of creating music. And that is enough for me to actually also enjoy the music, because I know there was somebody here who actually spent time doing that, right? And that's also like, it's interesting when you were talking about working for like disco or pop artists in the 80s in Germany, which was quite a special time with the kind of musical production, and I have never really felt any I was never saying this is bad music, or for me, like, if there was a hook, if there was something that sounded interesting, that moved me, then it was great. And even if it didn't move me, it was great.
Yes, it's also a question of craft, of handwerk.
Yes.
That's also a way into making music. It's it took me a long time to realize what was going on with this, working on these productions, which were, there were certain things expected of the artists, and expected of the record company. And as I said, it was business. It was a very commercial thing. But there's still a lot of fun involved. And when you look at this stuff, these old clips from TV shows, from Top of the Pops, or what's his name, the guy in Bremen, Mike Leckerbusch, these TV things that people, I mean, the kids used to really wait for whenever it was Friday night when this show would come along. It was like a it was a sort of cult for lots of people, whether it was Schlager, whether it was beat or pop music, or the and I think this is the very first thing we said about responsibility this is what I mean. This is for me the responsibility that you bear. You have a responsibility to entertain people. And that's absolutely legitimate. You can. I've never understood why musicians, a lot of musicians, are become really ugly when they're confronted with something that they themselves can't either understand or you don't have to fight. I mean, you don't have to find Helene Fischer good. You don't have to go to her shows. But you have to appreciate that she's entertaining people and giving them a good time. And this is a pretty big achievement for anybody to give people a good time, you know. And I think you ought to respect that as a musician, because it's one of the main things about what you do, isn't it? You can see it on all sorts of levels. You can see it from on a very sort of hermetic level, that it's something that that you can maybe only share with a few people. But I think you have to share it. There's no point in just doing it in your bedroom. You have to share it to at least with your family, or maybe you with your daughter, or me with the next door neighbor, or whatever. You have to share. You have to share what you're doing for it to be valid. And this is it can be on a very minimalist level, or it can be in a stadium with 20,000 people. But you have it's this thing of entertaining people, making them feel good. And so I never understood why lots of musicians, I have to say, unfortunately, particularly in Germany, why lots of musicians become so hateful when the discussion turns up with. I mean, we all do it. We all make fun of. We all have our pet. We all have our pet hates, or we get very. It becomes a sort of joke when you talk about whatever. I don't want to name any names, but people that regularly come up in musician circles, where there's always a silly anecdote, or there's a general expression of distaste. Yeah, all right, that's okay. But basically, particularly successful people people who have success at entertaining people, I think they deserve respect. I think that this is a discussion that I've had over the years with many colleagues, because I know lots of people that I greatly respect, musicians that I greatly respect, say that believe that there's a certain elitist way of thinking about making music, that your justification should be years of study and practice and capability, and if you get that far, virtuosity. But I agree with you completely. Virtuosity is basically pretty boring. It's what it's used for. What happens when people use their virtuosity can be interesting, but very often it's not. I remember going to see Herbie Hancock in I think it was the end of the 70s. It was around the time of I don't know if you remember this, when what was the record that crossed over from the jazz charts into the rock charts? Amazing record with Watermelon Man and Vein Melter and I think there are 4 pieces on it. And it was a huge hit.
Headhunters, was it Headhunters?
Yeah, Headhunters, of course. Headhunters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
An incredible record. Mm. And at this time I went to see them in Munich. That band, which was spectacular. The absolutely world-class percussionist. I can't remember his name. guy who had a kabash which was covered in sort of glittering chains, and he'd throw it up into the lights, and it was an incredible show. And the guys, the old guys who hung out every night at the Domicile, a jazz club in Munich, were gathered in the foyer, and they were sort of complaining about this sort of fairy tale shit that's going on, and it looks like a bloody Christmas tree. And looks it's Disneyland. This isn't jazz. I mean, I thought I've got to avoid this. Whatever I do in my musical existence, I got to avoid this kind of shit. I really enjoyed the show, and so did the audience. And after all, it was a hit record. But you just can't close this out. You can't shut it away from the. It's part of the main body of what's going on. That's it. All belongs to music. It all belongs to entertaining people, moving people. And I think this is a thing with King Crimson, that at that time in the 70s it was a very entertaining band. I mean, this sounds like a contradiction because they were often on stage. It was often, as I said about this gig in Pforzheim, it was very dark and very intense, and the German word is beklemmend. But at the same time, it was also circus. It was also it was an entertainment. A very sort of deep entertainment, if you like, profound entertainment.
Yes, yeah, and I guess that is this deep entertainment that you're talking about. That was the power, let's say, that brought people to Robert Fripp's courses. Yeah. I think really that's kind of like what I was talking about, and like there's this interesting, because we started talking about language at the beginning of the conversation, and like this, there are like some English expressions which I find funny or irritating sometimes. For example, the concept of guilty pleasure, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't even know if there's a German equivalent for it.
There's not, because it doesn't happen in German. Guilty pleasure. That's wonderful. It's an interesting one, because I couldn't translate it either. I think, but it's harmless. It's harmless. It's like when you're saying raspberry yogurt is my guilty pleasure, or Gummibärli, or pistachio ice cream is my guilty pleasure. It can be a little bit more heavy as well. You can also say that 70% rum is my guilty pleasure, and I mean that's more guilt than pleasure.
But in the context of music, though, I find it a fascinating concept. Like like one of the main answers people give is like ABBA. ABBA's music is the guilty pleasure, and I've never really understood the concept of why pleasure.
Where's the guilt? Where's the guilt? These are two of the greatest composers of the 20th century, and where's the guilt? These guys, and but that's exactly what I'm talking about. I think that I remember having a discussion with where was it? That's right. It was with John Wetton and his wife, the lady that he was with in his final years, Lisa.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I didn't know her very well. We were sitting in a pizzeria with a few friends in our hometown, and we were talking about guilty pleasures. It's exactly the same thing, and everybody inclusive, including John, who didn't really he didn't play the game really. But everybody said that what they musically got off on, but didn't want to admit it, right? And I remember, and I said, actually, my guilty pleasure is Lionel Richie. I think Lionel Richie I love listening to his songs. I think they're amazing. And everybody looked at me blankly and sort of just like, yeah, but he's great. And I realized I'd been living in Germany too long. That's not quite fair. That's really not fair. But there's a little bit of that. There's one other thing I have to say about this that I've noticed with my English colleagues is that they're much more prepared to be genuinely pleased when you, as a friend or colleague or acquaintance, are successful. And doesn't happen so much in Germany. There's not this natural the natural reaction is, hey, this is amazing. You've got a top 10 hit, or you landed this amazing tour, or whatever. Oh man, it's incredible. That doesn't happen too often in Germany.
No, that's kind of like it's sort of like a joke that in the US, if you drive a big car, and then somebody stops next to you and goes, great, well done, And here in Germany, people call you an asshole when you drive an expensive car.
You're talking about it's like, yeah, I'm going on so and so's summer tour. Hey, great, amazing, and your German colleague will say, well, doing a lot of open airs, aren't you? It's going to be a wet summer.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit of a tendency that I've noticed.
Yeah,
I think this idea of the community idea isn't quite so developed in Germany among musicians, or any other. Maybe it is in other artistic circles. Could well be. Maybe the theatre. Theatre's a law unto itself. I don't know. In film, maybe they're usually nice to each other.
Like my observation is that in different cultures, like you mostly have like these two kinds of cultures. One is the culture of saying yes, and the culture of saying no. And Central Europe certainly is the culture of the no. So like if you go somewhere and you say like, I would like to work for you, the answer is no. Show me what you got, so that and where prove yourself exactly, and where I don't know, I can I've been visiting the US for a long time, so I have some sort of idea, and it seems a little bit different there, where there is like a little bit of like if you sense some enthusiasm in a person, you're like more likely to accept that or to take the chance, right? And that really is not happening in Germany, and it's super frustrating.
So enthusiasm in itself is slightly suspect in Germany,
it is,
isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there are enough examples of this, but but basically, I mean, yeah, I think you're the psychologist. You tell me. I've never worked out why we get this impression. I don't know what happened. I mean, I can explain a lot of stuff the way people are here historically. I think that's quite. If you're fairly well informed about what's been going on in the past 100 years, then you can explain a lot of stuff about German society.
I agree.
That's not rocket. It's not rocket science. It's logical, and there are certain tendencies that I find quite difficult to. I find quite difficult to find the go to the roots.
Yes.
Yeah, but tell me something else on Guitarcraft. That afterwards, where you said you took you quite put it quite brutally. You said you took what Robert was offering,
Yeah.
and you decided that you had to do your own thing, use it for yourself. Are you successful in doing this, in using what you learned, or have you? Is it a step that you sort of that you left behind now, or is it still very much in your creative process? You know, making music.
I would say it's still very much. It's one. How do you say, one pillar of my life, and an important one, like that you can't just put it away. Like it has to be there. It is there, and I don't know. Like for me, as a human being, I think I've always been interested, and I hope you kind of like get the sense of, like, you know, me talking, like us talking with each other. I have this respect for other people generally, to kind of like there's always like the benefit of the doubt that the other person has something that is wonderful. Like that's sort of like how I go out into the world, like to so I always kind of like, and sometimes wrongfully assume that somebody has something good to offer, right? But and with Guitarcraft was just like exactly that, you know. It was something great, something good, and it was very, very inspiring. And you know, the music, even though I love King Crimson's music, I love Robert Fripp's playing, but my real favorites are different, you know. Like I'm like my biggest hero is Mike Oldfield, you know, for example, and as sort of like a musician's musician, which I think what he is, at least like from my perspective. And so you see, like I don't have to be like 100% devoted, let's say, to a certain person or to a certain genre or a certain band or whatever, and I can integrate the things I can learn into my life, and so you know, all the like the how do you say, like the avalanche that having been in Guitarcraft, all the people I met, the bands I joined, you know, I joined a band of crafties which was called the Europa String Choir. And all of that has contributed to my career. There is I'm not sure, you must have met Sid Smith at some point or talked with him, because he's the one who wrote the book.
Obviously, I've corresponded with him at length.
Yeah.
And so I was very interested to see I watched your conversation with him all the way through, simply because I hadn't met him. Incidentally, exactly the same with David Singleton, somebody who I've often communicated with but never met. So I took the chance of sussing him out by watching your talk with him. So that was great.
Yeah. So Sid was, was my he was the first person who kind of like recognized my talent and took it and put me in touch with Ian Boddy, who's a musician from the UK, and that was very important. So like I think that most of what I do is really based on the fortunate events that I actually decided to go to a Guitarcraft course. So there's a lot of good stuff that has come out of it for me.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And you know, like my playing is very much influenced, obviously, by what Robert, like the techniques he taught, but also like the sound, this kind of like soundscaping that I do, which is kind of based on very, very, very Fripp inspired, and so I see, I don't know, and again, like I don't feel any guilt to actually kind of like go further, somehow go further with those artistic elements.
Well, of course. I mean, that's the point of the whole exercise, isn't it?
Probably.
You take this chalice and sort of carry it out into the world. That sounds pretty high flying stuff. So, but I'm sure Robert would like that idea. I don't know him very well. I met him a couple of times, talked to him at length, twice maybe. My way to Robert was always through John Wetton, and John was always very down to earth about Robert. I got to know Robert's well, first of all, his humor, which is very special, and and his also his earthiness through John Wetton, because John liked him a lot, and it was a mutual attraction. John was admired his virtuosity. John admired, and John never admitted it if he admired somebody's virtuosity. He'd never talk about it. He used to accept it as a given if somebody could play really well. Egal, it doesn't matter which instrument. But I know he admired Robert, and the other way around. I think Robert liked John's the way he was so irreverent always, and sort of his anarchistic tendency, probably, as Robert saw it. So they were I think they liked each other. But I got to know Robert through John, and in as much as that's in as much as that's possible. So just a little bit. And I like the fact that somebody can be so influential as a personality and as a musician, as a performer, at the same time as being such a weirdo, and I mean that in a positive sense. It's somehow the Robert's discipline in his music, and the discipline that he's applied to himself all his life. Somehow it's I find it very nice that it doesn't always line up with him as a person. The little things about it, but this is just impressions that I got over the years. I think he's an important musical personality, and he was a legend in the '60s in Bournemouth, in our hometown, because he could play Orange Blossom Special faster and more precisely than anybody else. The band, I think the band was called the League of Gentlemen. This was before the League of Gentlemen that he formed later. This is his. They played church halls and youth clubs and stuff, and played covers. And he was already legendary for his prowess as a well, I suppose a teenager. Well, we were all 18, 19. And I never ever imagined that I'd have anything to do with his organization, with his bands. That was a real. And as I said, when I turned up, when I brought the first Crimson album to play to my new bandmates with Supertramp, of course I didn't have any idea that I'd be connected with this ongoing story at all. I didn't know that was going to happen. You know, and I certainly didn't know that 10 years later I'd be working with disco acts and
Yeah.
and pop stars, starlets, and this kind of thing. This is one of the great things for me. I also never could ever imagine that I'd sing in the court of the Crimson King on a big stage with lights and everything. So that's a great thing for me, full of surprises, me making music.
I'm curious about a few more things, if you still have time for me, Richard.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
So with the original, the more than an association with Supertramp, right? Like having been part of that band, has there ever been any sort of, are you still in contact?
Not really.
No. Yeah.
I last saw Roger in 2000. Jesus, that was 21 years ago.
Wow.
When he played a solo gig in Munich.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy at the Süddeutsche Zeitung that I was friendly with, who sent me down there to write a review for the Süddeutsche. He thought this was a nice gag, sort of thing. So I went along with my pencil and piece of paper and did that. And I hadn't seen Roger for, I don't know, I honestly don't know how long, probably 20 years, getting on that way. And it was really great. He was really warm. And I went into the Elsa Halle. I don't know if you know it. I don't think it's a venue anymore. It was on Ballernstrasse in Munich. A sort of warehouse, sort of. I went down there and went into the venue, and he was doing his sound check, and he jumped off the stage, and we embraced and had a talk as much as his time schedule allowed. I watched the concert. I was completely amazed at his professionalism, because I was still seeing him as a 19-year-old who joined Supertramp, and he's an absolute professional performer and very, very good. He was very good, and I thought the songs were so great without the Supertramp arrangements. How I was so pleased that they worked so well. But what sort of moved me most of all was the audience. There was an audience. There were lots of sort of couples in their, I suppose, mid-40s, something like that, and who were sort of holding each other close and singing along and thinking about their youth with Supertramp in the 70s, right? I didn't have anything to do with that process. I can't claim to any part of Supertramp's success. I was just there for the first album, first 18 months, and it was 4 years later. It was 74, 75. This was 4 years afterwards that A&M decided that Supertramp was going to make it. So I didn't have anything to do with that, and but I was really moved to see these people. To see how sort of at first hand how important these songs were for them, the Supertramp hits that Roger sang. It was really, really part of their lives, but after that, I think his situation changed in the couple of years at the beginning of the millennium. In the couple of years after that, sort of he left his family and apparently his situation changed anyway. And although we did exchange a couple of mails, it faded out. And the last time I spoke to Rick Davies was I suppose 7 or 8 years ago, when he on the last Supertramp album, which was called Slow Motion, he recorded a song which I had written the words for in 1970. So he called up and said they were doing it and they're going to send me a new title contract and that kind of thing. And I had a bit of a chat with him, but I haven't seen him since the 70s. In the 70s, when they played in Munich, we all used to go to the Domicile to see the jazz, but they were very lucky. Rick Davis is a very big band fan. And on the night before they played in the Olympiahalle in, I don't know when it was, 78 maybe, 77, 78, I don't know. The Thad Jones, Mel Lewis big band was playing in the Domicile when we went down to see this amazing band together, which you usually don't see outside of a concert hall. I mean, the Domicile at that time, I think it was a 200-seater, and 4 trombones, unamplified in a small room. That's you could forget your Marshall stacks. That's really loud. It was very impressive, and 18-piece orchestra doing these amazing arrangements. And I went down with Rick, and that I think that was the last time I saw him. No, not quite the last time I saw him. I did see him once. I did see him once after that, a few years later, at the beginning of the 80s. Again in Munich, he visited I was playing with some people for a Mama Concerts staff party, I think it was, and it was also had something to do with Tina Turner's birthday. It was one of these internal things. I can't honestly remember because I was so drunk. I lose track of what happened. But I spoke to him then. But it was a long time ago, and unfortunately, I blew that one because I got so smashed. It was all too much. I'm glad that I didn't have to go and live in the States. I'm glad that I left the band when I did, and made a decision for Europe. I'm very thankful that I didn't. I wasn't tempted to. But they wouldn't have been so successful. I think I would have been a stone in their path, a stone in their pathway in the blues song. To quote the blues song, my sense, I just don't. Basically, I don't think I had the same kind of talent as Rick and Roger. They're both very special songwriters, and I wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have kept up with them, and they in fact, before they brought out the third album, which was Crime of the Century in 1975, I think they knew it was the new lineup. It was the third lineup, the successful lineup with Jesse Siebenberg and Dougie and John Helliwell. I think they knew that they were going to make it. The record company had decided that this was going to be a successful band, and they had the material for it too, and everybody knew this sort of thing. So, but they were still a little bit worried about the final shape of the songs and the final impression that the songs made. And in fact, they asked me to. Roger wrote to me and said, "Would you like to come and visit us in our?" They had a farmhouse rented in southern England, not far from where my mother lived. And so I was visiting my mother, and I went to see them and listened to the new material, the Crime of the Century songs, School and Bloody Well Right and Dreamer and all this thing. And Roger gave me a tape and said, well, take this home and see if you can, if you want to improve on the lyrics. Ha! And I had to be honest. I couldn't. I thought it was great. Why should I? I would have done a lot more, probably complex stuff, and put in sort of a few fancy turns of phrase. I don't know, but it would have detracted from the energy that it had. You know, it was Rick and Roger because they were still more or less writing together, just about. Then it stopped afterwards, but they each did his own thing. But at that time, it was all there. It was a hit album. What am I going to, you know? Why should I try and get my foot in the door? I remained altruistic enough to say, no, you know, don't worry about it. It's great. It's great. I'm not gonna. I don't have anything to add. I don't have anything to add. And but we didn't. Although it was when we broke up, when I left the band, it was quite acrimonious. But that was only because of the circumstances of that we were living in. We had no money. We were doing 2 or 3 gigs a week, going up and down the M1 in England, and couldn't afford to live in a hotel. It was pretty hairy, the whole situation. And then we found out that the agency Chrysalis, which is, I mean, it's an absolute dream situation to be booked by Chrysalis at that time, of course, because they had all the gigs. Because of Chris Blackwell was the other, forget the other guy's name. They had the college circuit, which was so important at the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. That was make it or break it for bands on the road. And all these gigs were booked by Chrysalis, and we discovered by chance up in Scotland somewhere that they were buying and selling us, which is absolutely normal and happens all the time to this day. Do you know this expression? It means they were getting, I don't know, £2,000 from the gig and paying us whatever, 200, 400 maybe. And I was completely appalled by this. I was. It was real disillusionment on my part. Also naivety, of course, absolutely naive. And we had big fights about this. I said, you know, I wanted to break off relations with Chrysalis, the agency, which would have been suicidal. That's an absolutely insane thing to do. But in my sort of youthful, I wanted to stick to my principles. They're ripping us off. I don't want anything to do with them anymore. So the situation was in fact completely normal, and probably still is. And I tell you, this is why I need a manager, you see. And I left under a cloud, as the saying goes, and but afterwards, we got to see each other afterwards because they were touring around Europe and struggling, basically, and it was all okay, you know. It was all blown away. All the differences were blown away. Having said that, we weren't friends in that sense. You know, so the first band, the professional band that I played with John Wetton and John Hutchison, who now lives in the States, and so on, we were friends. We've been friends for years, and lots of bands start like this. They often don't stay that way, but it started like this. But Supertramp was put together through an advertisement in Melody Maker. One would call it a casting nowadays, but it wasn't really a casting. It was just a small ad for an advertisement for Musica.
Who put it out, the ad?
The management.
The management. Wow.
It was a little bit bigger than the other ones on the page, and musicians wanted for oh, I can't remember. I've got a copy of it somewhere, and it appears in the Supertramp biographies. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
From a guy in Madrid called Abel Fuentes, who runs a website called The Logical Web, which is the Spanish language source for information on Supertramp, has been for 20 years, I think. And of course, that's huge because it goes to all the South American people. And he's written a biography of Supertramp. It's 700 I don't know, 720 pages. Here you are. I mean, I wasn't absolutely aware that they were so interested, to tell you the truth. And I got lots of information out of this about, and I realized that we weren't actually, as people, we weren't sort of operating on the same level at all. And the way they went on, they were different from other A-list rock bands somehow. They existed in their own sort of cocoon, their own bubble. It's one of the very few bands. They had their own huge PA system and lighting equipment. It all belonged to them, you know. They just hired a trucking company to carry this, to transport this stuff, which I think is about the only band that ever did that at that time. Yeah. Everybody used to hire the stuff. And it became a sort of enclosed world, the Supertramp family, that meaning the technicians and the management and the band members and their families and so on. That was a situation that I wouldn't have been able to handle at all. I don't think that would.
You know, the reason why I asked you about them initially was that I find it interesting that again, like it's interesting. I'm almost 50 years old, and so looking back to when I was 19, that's kind of like 30 years. And even though you could say it's a long time, but really it's not. It's I don't know. It's I'm kind of interested in the experience that people make. Like once there's like a big chunk of time where a lot of things and a lot of different strains of narrative kind of like happen, you know, and this idea that you were there for the when that band was created, and you go your path, you know, you go and you become successful in your own right, and then other people kind of like they go that way, and as you say, they create their own bubble. And I find it interesting, like on a I don't want to say maybe on a psychological level, but on a human level, like how these different storylines and developments sort of because everything comes from that one source in a way, and this is kind of like, you know what I mean? It's sort of like a real life example of the creation of or the explosion of some sort of creative kernel, or I don't know how to.
I think you're right. I think that is a fascinating subject. I think it's the only problem with it is there are so many people involved in these developments, who are not able to continue to the end. I don't mean the people who die. I mean the after a few decades, that's becomes part of the equation. I mean the people who sort of jump off the bandwagon and do go in a completely different, just sort of disappear, if you like. If it's the music business is very in a sense egocentric, isn't it? That people can make a great success of their lives outside, who who started off being musicians, and all their hopes and dreams and fears were involved with music, and then they leave that path and do something else completely, and can also be very successful. But those of us who've carried on being musicians are inclined to not be totally interested, which is silly, really. I think this does happen to you. Maybe it's something that happens in show business generally, because the stuff you share is so intensive, isn't it? The things you have to do to survive are so on the edge sometimes. It's so sort of nerve-wracking that you can't always share it with somebody who hasn't experienced it for so long, or doesn't experience it anymore, or maybe took the easy way out, or I don't know, however you like to put it. It's quite a sort of egocentrical thing. I must admit that it's a bit of a problem. It wasn't, well, not anymore, but it was a bit of a problem as a lyricist, that I used to get a lot of stuff from talented amateurs saying, you're a lyricist, you enjoy writing lyrics. And wait, I don't enjoy it at all. But okay, they don't listen to you. Write me some words for this. This is, and it could be a really great song, but it's written by an ongoing gynecologist or architect or whatever. To tell you the truth, I hate to say this, but I don't want to waste my energy on his hobby. I have to admit this. My altruism doesn't go so far as to say, all right, I think this is a wonderful song and I'd like to write the words for it. Particularly if I've got a lot of other stuff to do at the same time. I don't want to indulge this person's hobby. I have to be absolutely honest. I'd rather work for people who are completely unsuccessful, but they want to make they want to be a success in music. You know, they want to be professional. They are professionals. It's a big because I remember you said you did your first live gig at 38, right? Did you?
First real, yeah.
I imagine that that since then your perspectives have changed a little bit on being a musician, and what it sort of took over, as it were, your existence. I could imagine. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
And that's the way it has to be, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's great to be a fantastic pianist and a fantastic pianist studying architecture, studying medicine, or studying anything. That's absolutely great, and you can enjoy that, and the people listening to you, you can always have a great time entertaining people at parties. But I really interested in people who want to make a living out of making music. That, you know, it's the only thing. It has to be the only.
Great to hear that. Very good to hear that. I guess that at some point in your career, were you ever let's say, forced to take that kind of gig just in order to have an income?
I've been lucky in as much as I've done a couple of to earn money. What have I've worked occasionally as this is in the 70s. I worked a couple of times as a still photographer for a small film company, independent film company. I've translated film scripts for, as it was then, I don't know, 600 or 1,000 marks a throw. That's quite hard work. And you know, film scenarios. I did that, but I haven't. I haven't driven a taxi or worked at McDonald's. So got nothing against doing that, but luckily I didn't have to do it. And after I was finished at university in Wales, 3 wonderful years, I immediately went back to music and started the first professional band with John Wetton and a couple of other guys. So didn't really do anything else. I find it interesting that the main gig that wasn't directly connected with music has been my family. That's the main thing. Really, that's the project that
the big project
distracts me most. I'm very thankful for it.
Richard, so we've already talked for over 2 hours.
Oh dear, I'm sorry.
No, it's been great.
This is why I asked you if you're going to edit it, because I know I do get carried away. I do start rambling on. It's also a question of age, of course. You're inclined to get this verbal diarrhea. You know.
No, you know, this.
Sorry.
For me, this format is allows that kind of diarrhea. No, but I wanted to ask you one last question, and you know, like I didn't get to ask you anything about your, you know, your like music making in Germany. That's something we maybe can talk about at some other time, really. But you said something very interesting, that you said your favorite songs are the ones where I'm not sure if you said like the songs were simple, but you were certainly talking about your contribution, the lyrics, your favorite works. What is your definition of simplicity, if I may ask?
Well, I think that's not difficult to explain. I have to draw on examples of great singers who, let's say, McCartney, I don't know, there are several, lots of them, Nat King Cole, Sinatra, who talk to you, who actually they're speaking to you. It's like they're talking to you directly in their songs. And if you can write, to be able to write a lyric that's so that can be directly communicated in this way, and it's simple in as much as that every listener understands it. It's not the Night Watch, which is about 17th century Holland. It's a direct statement that a good singer can. It's like the singer is then talking to his audience, and that's for me the ideal that you reach, and of course based on a melody which makes it even easier to communicate, you know, or Yeah, yeah. Beatles
That's one.
songs.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's maybe like the first explanation or definition, let's say, of simplicity that satisfies me somehow, because I like to ask this question to people, because there's always this idea about something is simple, or
I also I know that the term simplicity, the idea of simplicity, is sometimes people aren't honest when they or people don't actually mean simple. But I'm trying not to be coquettish with this term. I like songs that talk to me, that speak to me directly, and that's what pop music's all about for me. I think this direct communication. I mean, other aspects as well, but as far as the lyrics are concerned, it should be. It's also, I mean, it's also nice when Joni Mitchell sings her diary and tells us all about her love affairs wrapped up in poetic language, but in a way that comes under simplicity for me too, because she's being absolutely honest and direct about it. There's a couple of lines that are very simple, that speak volumes. She's a master. Sometimes in some Leonard Cohen songs, there are lines that contain a universe, or as Dylan says on his new album, I contain multitudes, right? And he also brings multitudes to its expression, but that's not simple. That's in fact, that is actually literature, but this is another discussion, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your interest. I'm greatly flattered. I'm sorry I rambled on for so long.
Yeah, I'm really happy that we've found each other now, and I hope we get a chance to meet again.
Get together on a more practical basis, right?
Yes.
Sometime in the new year.
Yes.
When the world comes back to life again, as I hope it will. Right?
Yeah. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. Take care. Gib deine Tochter ein Bussi von mir. Okay?
Das mache ich. Okay. Tschüss.
Bye bye. Bye bye.